In this video, I'm going to show you an answer from a real student to this question, which you can see on the screen right now. I'm going to show you what the student did well, what they didn't do so well, and I'm going to give them an overall band score. So let's start with the question itself, which you can see right here. So it says you should spend around 40 minutes on this task. Pretty simple. Write about the following topic. Okay. So the topic says, littering is a big problem in many countries. What are the reasons for this? And how can this problem be solved or fixed? So this question clearly has two parts. The first part is up here, okay, reasons. And then the second part is here, okay, how can we solve the problem? So for the student to get a high band score when it comes to task response, they need to talk about both of these parts. Okay, they need to talk about the reasons and how the problem can be solved. And when it says this problem, what problem are they talking about? Well, they're talking about littering. So this is the topic of the question. All right, so now let's have a look at the answer from the student. So here it is. Let's have a read together. So it says, environment is now a hotly debated issue among society as it affects to social well-being. Well, there's some big problems there already, particularly in relation to grammar. So it should be the environment. But then the student's got now. So I think it might be better to say the environment is a hotly debated issue. And just be careful with statements like this. Is this true? Is the environment a hotly debated issue? Well, I don't know. It just seems like a template sort of opener, and it looks like the student has just memorized this opener, and it doesn't really feel very natural here. So straight away, when I'm reading this, I'm getting the feeling that it's not going to be a high-level answer because there's some grammar issues and it just doesn't sound very natural. Now, in regards to this last little bit here, it should be as it affects social well-being. Now, overall, this sentence it's not the worst sentence in the world. It clearly tells the reader that the topic is the environment. One of the most increasing challenges that affects the environment. Just remember, when you have affect, normally we don't have a to afterwards. And in many nations is trashing problem. Okay, that affects the environment in many nations. So you wouldn't say is trashing problem. You would say something like is the issue, so let's just cross that out, of trash. That sounds a bit better there. And that's okay, but that sentence, it just sort of sounds like the student is repeating themselves because they've just talked about the environment in the first sentence up here, and then they're saying environment again. So it's just, there's a bit of repetition, and it might be better to put these two sentences together, or perhaps just to remove the environment in this second sentence and just focus on the trash, because the trash, if you look at the bottom right hand corner of the screen, that is the issue. Okay, that's what the question is about. Littering is a big problem. Okay, let's keep reading now. Due to lack of awareness and weak regulation, this issue is urgently needed to solve. Well, we wouldn't say this issue is urgently needed to solve. This sentence would need to be rephrased. It's just not correct, and it doesn't really make sense. Now, another thing is the student has got their two main ideas here: lack of awareness, weak regulation. I don't recommend that you put your main ideas in the introduction. I think it will be better if this student said what they're going to talk about, because I've read this introduction here and I don't know what the writer is going to talk about. And that's a bad sign. That is the purpose of an introduction. You need to tell the reader what you're going to talk about. So that's something to be aware of. Now let's go to the first body paragraph. In terms of causes of this challenge, okay, that's not bad. It's a topic sentence. It's telling the reader, then in this paragraph, the writer is going to talk about the challenges. That's great. That's fantastic. Education factor is inevitable to mention. Okay, so inevitable is not the right word. Inevitable means something will happen. You can't stop it. So that's not the wrong word. I'll put WW there for a wrong word, since it is the first institution to provide knowledge. Okay, fair enough. Right information and raising awareness to citizen. So lots of grammar problems there, lots of little mistakes. So the first thing is, it should be since it is the first institution to provide knowledge. Probably not right. I think we could just remove. We could say provide knowledge. It might even be better to say provide knowledge and information. And then instead of saying raising, because look here, we've got to provide, but then we've got raising. So we've changed the verb pattern. Here we've got verb 1, but here we've got verb ing. So we could change that and we could say something like to provide knowledge and information as well as raising awareness to citizen. I don't really like this. It just sounds a bit strange. And another problem here is that citizen should be a plural because it's not just one citizen. There are many citizens in the world. To provide more explanation and example. I don't know if I like this. It's not really necessary. And if you want to use this, you could just say something like to provide further explanation and then remove an example. There are certain. And to be honest, if it was me writing, I would not even put this in at all. I wouldn't say to provide further explanation. I would simply say there are certain. Just keep writing. You don't need to use this type of linking word or phrase all the time. There are certain people do not know, so you'd have to say who. So as you can see, lots of little grammar mistakes already. So this person's grammar is very likely not going to reach that band 7 mark. So there are certain people who do not know the practices, how to, well, you probably say regarding or of. So let's put regarding in there. How to separate the trashes. Well, I've noticed a problem there. Spelling. Okay, the spelling's not correct. And the trashes. Okay, trash is an uncountable noun. So we just say trash. And also, we don't need the, because we only use, well, not only, but most of the time we use the when we're talking about something specific. But if the student here says the trash, well, which trash are they talking about? Do you know? Do I know? No. So we shouldn't use the in this situation. So let's keep going. Specific bin and decide to put their stuff in the same garbages. So I don't really understand what this is saying. Put their stuff in the same garbages. I really don't understand that. So I'm going to just write rephrase there. That needs to be said in a different way. It's not very clear. And whenever this happens, whenever the examiner doesn't understand what you're writing, it's a big problem. Because if the examiner can't understand you, well, that suggests that you're not a high-level candidate and you're probably not going to be in that band 7 range or higher. Let's keep going. Another point worth mentioning. Okay, so it looks like the student is moving on to their next main point there. Fair enough, that's fine. Now, I think it will be better if the student added a little bit more support here before they started on their second point, because they've only provided a very short amount of support for their first idea, which is about education. So I think it will be better if there was a bit more support there. Let's continue. Another point worth mentioning is law and regulation. Well, this should be a plural, so I'll write plural and singular. When there is lower level. Okay, so I think there should be a full stop here. So let me just change to red. There should be a full stop, and then it should be a capital W. When there is a lower level of punishment, people will not afraid. Well, afraid is an adjective, and normally when we use an adjective, we need to have to be. So people will not be afraid and try to change their behaviors. Now, we wouldn't say behaviors, we'd say behavior. As a result, they have a less concerning and unaware. Again, I'm not sure what this means, less concerning. I think the writer's trying to say something like they will be, less concerned with their behavior. I'm really not sure, and unaware of this problems. Well, this is for one, and then we've got S. So we need to remove that S there. And this is just an example of how little mistakes are so easy to fix. I think most of you watching this video will know that we use this with one thing, but this student here, they probably know that as well, but maybe they've written this very quickly or they don't really think about their grammar. Okay, when you have this, you don't need or you shouldn't have S because that's a grammatical error. So that's the first body paragraph. And as you can see, there are a lot of mistakes here in all four areas when it comes to task response, grammar, vocabulary, and coherence and cohesion. So it's not looking like this is going to be a high level answer. But nonetheless, let's keep going and we'll have a look at the next paragraph. So to tackle with this problem, okay, great. We've got the topic sentence there. It's clear that now the student is going to talk about how to deal with or how to solve this problem. However, there's a mistake. We don't say tackle with, just to tackle this problem. Related organization, okay, problem there should be an S, and governments should have an S as well. Should to, again, very basic grammar mistake. After should, we don't have to, okay, after should, no to. Should cooperate together. Don't need to say cooperate. You can just say, don't need to say cooperate together. You can just say cooperate to provide far more education and knowledge for people to buy. So I think the writer means to make them understand the effects of this problem to their lives and to intrigue people to changing their behavior and also give them Okay, so what's the problem with this sentence here? It's way too long. And this is a common mistake I see with a lot of students. They try to write really, 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 really long sentences, and then the sentences are incorrect and they're very hard to understand. And that's what's happened here. It would have been much better if this student just broke this really long sentence into two or maybe even into three. And another thing worth mentioning is there's some vocabulary that is not used correctly. So for example, this word, and to intrigue people. Intrigue means to make someone really interested in something. So it's probably not the right word here. So I'm not going to make any other changes to this sentence here, but the student should definitely break that into two or maybe even into three. So let's keep reading. On aside from that, well, we don't say on aside. We would say, let me get my red pen. We would say something like apart from that. Apart from that, government. Okay, so again, basic mistake. It should be governments. Had better. That's a little bit informal. So instead of saying had better, we could simply say something like should. That would be the better way to say that. Alternatively, you could say something like governments would benefit by. Would benefit by. Again, we're missing an S. Laws and supervising laws and punishment more seriously to push the real movement. Yeah, I don't know what that means, push the real movement. So again, I'm a bit confused. So this is a bit of an issue. And just here, look what we've got. Set law, supervise law, and punishment. It's just too much together, and it will be better if the writer perhaps removed one of these things and maybe just said something like set laws and punishment to be maybe more strict. To push the real movement. Again, I'm not sure what real movement means there. So it looks like this paragraph has two main ideas. Okay, the first one is cooperation, and the second one is setting laws. And that's great, but it will be nice if there was a little bit more support for this idea here. Okay, because it's a great idea. Setting laws or creating laws is probably the better phrase to use, but it will be nice if there was more support and more information about why this is an effective solution. So let's move on to the last paragraph now. In conclusion, okay, fantastic. It's telling the reader that now we're moving on to the conclusion. Littering is a serious problem in society. Fantastic. Which is resulting from lacking. Okay, so we need to change that. Which is resulting from a lack of education and lower of regulation. Well, that's not correct, this bit here. So it will be better if the student said something like maybe insufficient, not enough, insufficient regulation, and then you could say something like of this area. However, it can cope up by, we'll come back to that in a second, cope up by the cooperation of related organization, government, and individuals themselves. Okay, so again, we're missing S, governments, organizations. Now, cope up, I don't know what that means. I think the student is trying to say that this problem could be solved or resolved or fixed. And another thing I've noticed is it. What is it? What is it talking about? This is a problem when it comes to coherence and cohesion because it's not easy to read and follow. What is it? Because it talks about regulation, education, serious problem. So I'm not sure what this it is referring to. If you use it, you need to use something before so you can refer back to what you said before. Now, going back to cope up, we could say something like, however, it can resolve the issue by. Alternatively, we could use the word alleviate. Okay, alleviate's a great word. It means to make something less bad. So this trash problem or this littering problem, it's bad, so we need to make it less bad. So the conclusion is okay. It summarizes the main ideas, but there's just a lot of vocabulary and grammar mistakes, and also that problem with it. So now let's go down and we'll give a score for each of the 4 criteria for this essay here. So task response, it's definitely not a 7 because for a 7, you need to develop your ideas quite well. So I'm going to give this a 6 because the student does have main ideas, but they're not sufficiently developed. The writer needs to develop the ideas more than they have. Coherence and cohesion, so how everything's joined together. It's okay. It's okay. There's no major problems with it, and it's not bad. So for me, again, I'm going to give this a band 6. Lexical resource. As you can see, the writer has quite a lot of higher level vocabulary, but a lot of the time they don't use it correctly. So take, for example, this word inevitable. Okay, great word, higher level word, but it hasn't been used correctly. And unfortunately, if you just use higher level words, but you don't use them correctly, well, this is not going to raise your band score. But the writer definitely has enough vocabulary to describe what they're talking about. So again, I'd give this a 6. And a lot of people might be thinking, well, no way, that's definitely not a 6. There is a lot of higher level vocab. Well, again, yes, there is, but there's too many mistakes. There's a lot of big issues here. And finally, grammatical range and accuracy. We've sort of talked about this. There are some complex sentences, there are some simple sentences, but there are a lot of mistakes. For a band 7, you need to produce frequent error-free sentences, and the candidate has not done this here, so there would be a band 6. So overall, this student would be a band 6.0 for their writing task 2.